The galaxy had always thought of Earth as nothing more than a quiet, unimportant planet. It was like that one house on the street everyone forgets exists. Small, messy, and not worth paying attention to. For centuries, alien ships zipped through human space without a second thought, taking whatever they wanted. Minerals from asteroids, rare gases from distant moons, even experiments on isolated colonies. It all happened under humanity's nose. And why not? Humans were divided, scattered across nations with no unified voice or power to stop them, or so everyone believed. But things were about to change in ways no one could have imagined. Deep in the cold darkness of space, far beyond the orbit of Mars, something stirred. A coalition fleet made up of three dominant alien species, the insectoid Zinthar, the aquatic Kael'torians, and the reptilian Vrak, was cruising toward Earth's solar system. Their mission was simple: mine resources from the moons of Mars and leave before anyone noticed. They'd done it countless times before, and this trip promised to be just another routine raid. What they didn't know was that humanity wasn't asleep anymore. Hidden beneath layers of secrecy, Earth's governments had been working together for decades. While the world squabbled over politics and borders, scientists, engineers, and strategists labored in secret facilities buried deep underground. Their goal was clear: to build something that would make the galaxy sit up and take notice. Something that would say, "Leave us alone." That something was the Sentinel, a warship unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Sleek, angular, and bristling with weapons, it looked less like a ship and more like a predator waiting to strike. On that fateful day, as the alien armada approached Mars, their sensors picked up an anomaly. At first it seemed harmless, a shadow drifting lazily behind Jupiter. But then, the object moved. Not slowly, not cautiously, but with purpose. It accelerated toward the fleet at speeds that defied logic, its massive frame emerging from the void like a ghost rising from the depths. Panic spread across the command decks of dozens of ships as the silhouette came into focus. This wasn't some asteroid or derelict vessel. This was a machine built for war. The aliens tried to identify it, scanning every inch for weaknesses. But there were none. Its surface shimmered faintly, protected by shields far beyond anything they'd encountered. Then, a Naya transmission crackled through their comms. In every language known to the cosmos, a single message echoed, "Turn back now, or face annihilation." For a moment, silence gripped the fleet. The Zinthar admiral, a towering figure with chitinous armor glinting under the dim lights of his bridge, scoffed at the warning. To him it was a bluff, a desperate attempt to scare them off. He gave the order to attack, confident in his fleet's superiority. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, lighting up the blackness between the stars. Energy beams lanced out, seeking to tear the mysterious ship apart. But nothing worked. Every shot hit the shimmering barrier surrounding the Sentinel and dissipated harmlessly. The warship didn't flinch. Instead, it responded with terrifying precision. Railguns fired projectiles at near-light speed, each round punching clean through alien hulls. Smaller scout ships exploded in bursts of flame and debris. Within minutes, chaos reigned among the invaders. The Kael'torian flagship attempted to flee, only to find itself hunted down by swarms of autonomous drones deployed by the Sentinel. These drones disabled engines and crippled systems without causing unnecessary loss of life. A grim reminder that humanity still valued restraint, even in battle. As the skirmish unfolded, fear began to spread across the Armada. The Vrak commander, a battle-hardened veteran with scales scarred from countless wars, stared at the carnage unfolding before him. His mind raced with questions. Who were these humans? How had they developed such technology? And most importantly, what would happen if they decided to push further into the galaxy? By the time the dust settled, nearly half the invading fleet lay in ruins. Drifting hulks floated silently in the void, their crews either dead or stranded. Meanwhile, the Sentinel hovered untouched, its presence radiating both awe and terror. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized that humanity wasn't just a passive observer in the cosmic game. They were players now, and they meant business. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. The alien armada was in disarray. What had started as a routine resource raid had turned into a nightmare. The sleek, angular warship, the Sentinel, loomed over them like a predator sizing up its prey. Every shot fired at it bounced harmlessly off its shimmering shields, while its own weapons tore through their ranks with terrifying efficiency. Plasma bolts, energy beams, and even experimental disruptors, all useless. For the first time in their long history of galactic dominance, the invaders found themselves outmatched. Back on the Zenthar flagship, the insectoid admiral paced furiously across the command deck. His chitinous exoskeleton clicked with each step, a sound that usually commanded respect, but now only added to the tension. Around him, his crew scrambled to make sense of what was happening. Sensors showed no weaknesses in the human ship's defenses. Their weapons couldn't penetrate its barrier, and their attempts to flee were thwarted by relentless drone attacks. It was as if the Sentinel had been designed specifically to counter everything they threw at it. "This is impossible," one of the officers muttered under his breath, though loud enough for the admiral to hear. He spun around, mandibles snapping in anger. "Impossible?" he hissed. "We are the Zenthar. We do not retreat. We do not surrender." With that, he barked orders to regroup and launch another assault. But deep down, doubt gnawed at him. This wasn't just some primitive species defending itself. This was calculated, advanced warfare, and it terrified him. Meanwhile, aboard the Kaoltorian flagship, panic was spreading like wildfire. The aquatic commanders floated nervously in their water-filled chambers, their gill-like structures flaring as they struggled to breathe calmly. One of them, a towering figure with bioluminescent markings pulsing faintly, tried to rally his crew. "We must fall back," he urged. "Regroup and reassess. This thing is beyond us." But before they could act, the Sentinel struck again. Railgun projectiles screamed through space, tearing through the Kaoltorian ship's hull like paper. Water erupted into the vacuum, freezing instantly into crystalline clouds. Crew members floated lifelessly in the debris, their bodies frozen mid-motion. The once mighty flagship listed heavily, its engines sputtering as it drifted helplessly away from the battle. On board the Vrak command cruiser, the situation was no better. The reptilian general leading the fleet clenched his claws tightly around the edge of his command console, knuckles white with fury. His scales bristled as he watched his forces crumble under the relentless assault. "Enough!" he roared, slamming his fist against the console. "If we cannot destroy it, then we will overwhelm it." With that, he ordered every remaining ship to converge on the Sentinel. Dozens of vessels broke formation and surged forward, firing everything they had in a desperate bid to overwhelm the human warship. Explosions lit up the void as missiles, lasers, and plasma bolts converged on a single point. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might succeed. The shields flickered, straining under the barrage. But the Sentinel wasn't done yet. From its underside, panels slid open, revealing rows of missile launchers. With a deafening roar, dozens of projectiles streaked outward, homing in on the attacking ships. Each missile carried payloads designed to disable rather than destroy, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Within moments, the tide turned again. Ships dropped out of the fight one by one, their crews scrambling to repair critical damage or abandon ship entirely. As the chaos unfolded, whispers began to spread among the survivors. Who were these humans? How had they developed such technology? Some speculated that Earth had secretly allied with a more advanced civilization, borrowing their knowledge to build the Sentinel. Others believed it was the result of centuries of hidden research, humanity quietly preparing for the day when they would finally stand up to their oppressors. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: humanity was no longer a passive observer in the galaxy. They had teeth now, and they weren't afraid to use them. By the time the skirmish ended, nearly half the invading armada lay decimated. Drifting hulks floated silently in the void, their crews either dead or stranded. Those who remained retreated hastily, their pride shattered along with their ships. As the last of the aliens disappeared into the distance, and the Sentinel hovered triumphantly in the silence, its presence radiating both awe and terror. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly, but cautiously. Governments worked tirelessly to control the narrative, ensuring that word of the Sentinel reached the public in a way that inspired hope rather than fear. Official statements praised the bravery of the crew and the ingenuity of humanity's scientists. Behind closed doors, however, leaders debated what to do next. Should they pursue the retreating fleet and strike at their homeworlds? Or should they consolidate their forces and prepare for the inevitable retaliation? For now, the decision was made to hold steady. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy, loud and clear. Earth was no longer an easy target, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were watching and planning. The question was, how long would it take for them to respond? And when they did, would humanity be ready? Word of the encounter spread like wildfire across the galaxy. It didn't take long for the story of the Sentinel to reach every corner of known space. Alien species who had once dismissed humanity as weak and insignificant now found themselves whispering about the mysterious warship that had single-handedly dismantled an entire armada. For some, it was a tale of awe and admiration, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. For others, it was a warning. A line had been drawn in the stars, and Earth was no longer a planet to be trifled with. But while the rest of the galaxy grappled with what had happened, humanity faced its own challenges. Back on Earth, the leaders from every nation convened in secret underground bunkers to discuss their next move. The room buzzed with tension as representatives argued over the best course of action. Some advocated for immediate retaliation, suggesting they strike at the homeworlds of the Zinthar, Kaltorians, and Vrak before they could recover. Others urged caution, warning that such aggression might unite the galaxy against them. After all, humanity had just proven it could defend itself. But could it survive an all-out interstellar war? In the end, cooler heads prevailed. Instead of launching an offensive, they decided to send the Sentinel on a diplomatic mission of sorts. Its purpose wasn't just to showcase humanity's newfound strength, but also to extend an olive branch to any species willing to negotiate fair trade agreements. And this decision sparked heated debates among the crew aboard the warship. Many felt uneasy about showing mercy after years of exploitation by alien forces, but deep down, they understood the importance of diplomacy. If humanity wanted to secure its place in the galaxy, it couldn't rely solely on fear. It needed allies. As the Sentinel embarked on its journey through nearby star systems, its presence alone sent shockwaves through the cosmos. On one stop, it encountered a small mining colony operated by the Corlins, a timid insectoid species known for their pacifism. At first, the Corlins cowered in fear, assuming the warship had come to destroy them. But when the crew broadcasted a message of peace and offered protection in exchange for resources, the Corlins were overwhelmed with gratitude. They eagerly agreed to establish trade relations, seeing humanity not as conquerors but as potential saviors. Not every encounter went so smoothly. In another system, the Sentinel crossed paths with a group of pirates, rogue factions emboldened by rumors of Earth vulnerability. These scavengers had spent years raiding human colonies, stealing supplies and enslaving survivors. When they spotted the warship, they laughed it off as a bluff, assuming it was just another propaganda tool meant to scare them away. That assumption cost them dearly. Within minutes, the Sentinel deployed its drones, disabling their ships and capturing their leaders. The pirates were given a choice: cease their attacks on human settlements or face annihilation. Most chose the former, retreating into the shadows with tails between their legs. Despite these victories, not everyone viewed the Sentinel favorably. Whispers of resentment began to ripple through certain sectors of the galaxy. Among them were the ruthless Ziran Empire, whose emperor saw humanity's rise as a direct threat to his dominance. To him, the Sentinel wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of defiance, proof that smaller civilizations could challenge even the mightiest empires. He vowed to crush humanity before they grew stronger, ordering his generals to prepare for an invasion unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Back on Earth, intelligence reports confirmed the growing threat. Spy satellites detected massive shipyards orbiting Ziran-controlled planets, churning out vessels at an alarming rate. Weapons factories worked around the clock, producing devastating new technologies designed specifically to counter the Sentinel. It was clear that the Zirans weren't planning a skirmish. They were preparing for total war. On board the Sentinel, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Engineers fine-tuned the ship's systems, ensuring every weapon and shield was operating at peak efficiency. Pilots practiced evasive maneuvers in simulators, while strategists pored over data from previous battles, searching for weaknesses in the Ziran fleet. Morale remained high, bolstered by the knowledge that they weren't fighting just for themselves, but for the future of their species. Meanwhile, diplomats traveled the globe, urging world leaders to set aside their differences and unite under a single banner. For decades, humanity had been divided by borders, in ideologies, and petty rivalries. But now faced with an existential threat, people began to realize that their survival depended on standing together. Slowly but surely, nations pooled their resources, contributing everything from raw materials to manpower to support the war effort. Factories that once produced cars and electronics were repurposed to build weapons and spacecraft. Scientists collaborated across continents, sharing breakthroughs that would give humanity an edge at coming conflict. Even ordinary citizens played a role. Communities rallied to support the cause, organizing fundraisers and volunteering their skills. Artists painted murals depicting the Sentinel as a beacon of hope, while musicians composed songs celebrating humanity's resilience. For the first time in history, Earth truly felt like one planet, united by a common purpose. Yet despite these efforts, doubts lingered. Could humanity really stand up to the Ziran Empire? Their fleet was said to be 10 times larger than anything the Sentinel had faced before. Their weapons were rumored to be capable of obliterating entire cities in seconds. And their emperor, he was a figure shrouded in myth and legend, a ruler who had never tasted defeat. As the days turned into weeks, the crew aboard the Sentinel kept a close eye on the horizon. They knew the Zirans were coming, and when they arrived, it would be the fight of their lives. But they also knew something else. Humanity had already proven it could rise above adversity. From the ashes of division and despair, they had forged a weapon capable of challenging the stars. Now, it was time to see if that weapon could protect the fragile spark of life that called Earth home. Time was running out. The question wasn't whether humanity would face the Zirans. It was whether they would be ready when the moment came. The galaxy held its breath. News of the Sentinel's victories had traveled far and wide, sparking both admiration and fear among alien civilizations. Some species saw humanity's rise as an opportunity, a chance to break free from the oppressive grip of empires like the Zirans. Others viewed it as a threat, a challenge to their dominance in the cosmos. But no matter where you stood, one thing was certain: Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. Yet for all its newfound strength, humanity couldn't afford to relax. The Ziran Empire loomed on the horizon, a storm cloud gathering over the stars. With their emperor, a figure whose very name struck terror into the hearts of his enemies, had declared war, not just on the Sentinel, but on humanity itself. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The Zirans were building a fleet unlike anything ever seen before. Thousands of ships, each bristling with weapons designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about sheer, unrelenting power. On board the Sentinel, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable clash. Every day brought new drills, new simulations, and new strategies. Engineers fine-tuned the ship's systems, ensuring every railgun, missile launcher, and shield generator was operating at peak efficiency. Pilots practiced evasive maneuvers in zero-gravity simulators, pushing themselves to the limits of human endurance. When strategists pored over data from previous battles, searching for patterns that might give them an edge against the Zirans, But preparation wasn't limited to the warship alone. Back on Earth, entire nations mobilized in support of the effort. Factories once used to produce cars and electronics were repurposed to churn out weapons and spacecraft components. Scientists collaborated across continents, sharing breakthroughs that could tip the scales in humanity's favor. Even ordinary citizens played their part, volunteering their time and resources to support the cause. Communities came together to organize fundraisers, while artists painted murals depicting the Sentinel as a symbol of hope and resilience. Despite these efforts, doubts lingered in the minds of many. Could humanity really stand up to the Zirans? When their fleet was said to be 10 times larger than anything the Sentinel had faced before, their weapons were rumored to be capable of obliterating entire cities in seconds. And their emperor, he was a figure shrouded in myth and legend, a ruler who had never tasted defeat. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the Zirans were developing a superweapon, a device capable of tearing planets apart. Others whispered of experimental technologies designed specifically to counter the Sentinel. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. When the Zirans arrived, they wouldn't come to negotiate. They would come to conquer and destroy. As the days turned into weeks, tension mounted aboard the Sentinel. The crew knew they were humanity's first line of defense, the thin red line standing between Earth and annihilation. Each member carried the weight of that responsibility, knowing that failure wasn't an option. Conversations in the mess hall grew quieter, laughter became rarer, and sleep became harder to find. Yet despite the pressure, morale remained high. They weren't fighting just for themselves. They were fighting for the future of their species. Meanwhile, pirate factions emboldened by the Zirans began testing humanity's resolve. Small raiding parties launched hit-and-run attacks on Earth's colonies, striking quickly and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. These skirmishes served two purposes: to weaken humanity's defenses and to gather intelligence on the Sentinel. Though the attacks caused damage, they also gave humanity valuable insights into the tactics and technology used by their enemies. One such attack occurred near the outskirts of the solar system. A group of pirates ambushed a supply convoy heading to Mars, hoping to disrupt the flow of resources to the Sentinel. What they didn't expect was the swift response from Earth's newly formed defense fleet, comprised of repurposed civilian vessels and hastily constructed fighters. The fleet may not have been as advanced as the Sentinel, but it was determined. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, weaving through enemy formations and exploiting weaknesses in their defenses. By the time the battle ended, the pirates had been driven back, their ships damaged or destroyed. These victories, though small, proved crucial in boosting humanity's confidence. They showed that even without the Sentinel, Earth could hold its ground. But everyone knew the real test was yet to come. And the Zirans weren't pirates. They were a military juggernaut, and their arrival would change everything. Back on Earth, leaders continued to rally the global population. Speeches were broadcast across the planet, urging citizens to remain united in the face of adversity. "We are not defined by our differences," one leader declared. "We are defined by our shared humanity. Together, we will stand. Together, we will fight. And together, we will win." The message resonated deeply. People from all walks of life stepped forward to contribute in any way they could. Farmers donated food to feed the troops. Teachers volunteered to educate children displaced by the conflict. Even artists joined the effort, using their talents to inspire hope and courage. Murals depicting the Sentinel sprang up in cities around the world, alongside portraits of ordinary citizens doing extraordinary things. Songs celebrating humanity's resilience filled the airwaves, reminding everyone what they were fighting for. As the final preparations were made, the crew aboard the Sentinel gathered in the ship's observation deck. Through the massive windows, they gazed out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the Xeran fleet was drawing closer. No one spoke. Words weren't needed. Each person understood the gravity of the situation, the enormity of the task ahead. Yet despite the uncertainty, there was a sense of quiet determination. Humanity had risen from the ashes of division and despair to forge a weapon capable of challenging the stars. Now it was time to see if that weapon could protect the fragile spark of life that called Earth home. Time was running out, and the question wasn't whether humanity would face the Xerans. It was whether they would be ready when the moment came. The day finally came. The Xeran fleet arrived, blotting out the sky with its sheer size. Thousands of ships filled the void, their engines glowing like angry stars as they descended upon Earth's orbit. It was a sight that would have broken most civilizations, a tidal wave of metal and firepower, unstoppable and merciless. But humanity wasn't most civilizations. They had prepared for this moment, not just with weapons and shields, but with something far more powerful: unity. On board the Sentinel, the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. Every member knew their role. Every system had been double-checked, and every contingency plan rehearsed until it became second nature. Yet, no amount of preparation could fully calm the nerves of those about to face such overwhelming odds. As the Xeran flagship moved into position, its massive frame casting a shadow over the battlefield, the tension aboard the Sentinel was palpable. This wasn't just another skirmish. It was the fight of their lives. Back on Earth, billions watched the unfolding drama from their homes, their hearts pounding with anticipation. News outlets broadcast live footage of the battle, showing grainy images of the alien armada looming closer. Commentators spoke in hushed tones, their voices trembling as they described the scale of the invasion. For many, it felt like the end of the world. But amid the fear, there was also hope. Hope that the Sentinel, and the spirit of humanity behind it, could pull off the impossible. When the first shots rang out, as chaos erupted across the battlefield, the Xerans opened fire with everything they had, unleashing barrages of plasma torpedoes and energy beams. The sky above Earth lit up like a fireworks display, except these explosions carried death instead of celebration. Smaller human vessels darted through the chaos, weaving between enemy ships and launching counterattacks. Pilots executed maneuvers so daring they seemed suicidal, yet somehow they worked. Missiles streaked through space, targeting Xeran cruisers and frigates, while railguns fired projectiles at near-light speed, tearing through hulls with devastating precision. At the heart of the battle stood the Sentinel, its sleek form cut through the fray like a blade, drawing fire from dozens of ships at once. Plasma bolts and laser blasts hammered against its shields, causing them to flicker but never fail. In response, the warship unleashed its arsenal, each shot calculated to maximize damage. Railgun rounds punched clean through enemy vessels, sending shock waves rippling through the fleet. Autonomous drones swarmed around the ship, intercepting incoming missiles and disabling hostile fighters before they could get close. But the Zirans weren't going down without a fight. Their flagship, a monstrosity larger than any ship humanity had faced before, began deploying experimental weapons. Massive energy cannons fired beams capable of slicing through entire squadrons of human fighters in a single sweep. Gravity disruptors created pockets of distorted space, pulling ships helplessly into crushing singularities. And then there was the Emperor himself, watching from the safety of his command chamber, directing the assault with cold efficiency. As the battle raged on, losses mounted on both sides. Human pilots sacrificed themselves to protect their comrades, ramming their damaged ships into enemy vessels or detonating explosives at point-blank range. Civilian volunteers manned makeshift turrets on repurposed freighters, firing wildly at anything that came too close. Despite their bravery, the odds remained stacked against them. The Ziran fleet was simply too large, too relentless. Realizing they couldn't win through brute force alone, the crew of the Sentinel devised a risky gambit. Using its superior speed and agility, the warship lured the Ziran flagship deeper into Earth's atmosphere. The alien commanders, eager to destroy the symbol of humanity's defiance, took the bait. As the massive vessel descended, its systems began to falter under the strain of atmospheric friction. Heat shields buckled, engines sputtered, and structural integrity failed. With one final burst of acceleration, the Sentinel broke away, leaving the flagship to plummet uncontrollably toward the planet below. The explosion that followed was catastrophic. A blinding flash illuminated the horizon as the Ziran flagship disintegrated, scattering debris across hundreds of miles. The shock wave rippled outward, destabilizing nearby ships and sending panic coursing through the remaining fleet. Without their leader, the Zirans' coordination crumbled. Ships turned on each other in confusion, while others fled in disarray, desperate to escape the carnage. By the time the dust settled, the battlefield was eerily quiet. Drifting hulks floated silently in the void, their crews either dead or stranded. Of the thousands of ships that had arrived, only a fraction remained operational, and none dared to approach Earth again. The Ziran Empire, once thought invincible, had been humbled. Their emperor's vow to crush humanity had ended in failure, his flagship reduced to ashes. Aboard the Sentinel, the crew allowed themselves a brief moment of relief. Exhaustion etched deep lines into their faces, but their eyes shone with triumph. They had done the impossible, not just by defeating an overwhelming force, but by proving that humanity could rise above adversity. Each member understood the cost of victory, the sacrifices made along the way, and the responsibility that now rested on their shoulders. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted across the globe. Cities lit up with fireworks, streets filled with cheering crowds, and monuments were adorned with banners honoring the heroes of the battle. Speeches praised the courage of the pilots, the ingenuity of the engineers, and the resilience of ordinary citizens who had come together in humanity's darkest hour. For the first time in history, Earth truly felt united, not by borders or ideologies, but by a shared sense of purpose. Yet amidst the jubilation, there was also reflection. Leaders gathered to discuss the future, knowing that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's newfound strength would attract both allies and enemies. Diplomatic envoys prepared to reach out to neighboring species, offering peace to those willing to negotiate and standing firm against those who sought conflict. Scientists continued their work, pushing the boundaries of technology to ensure Earth would never be caught unprepared again. For the crew of the Sentinel, life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an ordeal. Repairs were made to the warship, scars patched up, and systems fine-tuned for whatever challenges lay ahead. Conversations in the mess hall grew lighter, laughter returning as the weight of impending doom lifted. But even in moments of peace, they remained vigilant. They knew better than anyone that the galaxy was unpredictable, and threats could emerge when least expected. As the Sentinel drifted silently in orbit, its presence served as a reminder of what humanity had achieved, and what it was capable of achieving in the future. The stars still held mysteries, dangers, and opportunities. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, humanity had proven one thing beyond doubt. They belonged among the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations watched and waited. Some admired humanity's courage, while others plotted revenge. But one truth echoed throughout the cosmos. Earth was no longer a planet to be trifled with. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of unity and determination. And as long as the Sentinel stood guard, humanity's place in the galaxy was secure.